everybody. Welcome to the HooperCast, episode something. Hey, Dustin.
Hey, Hooper.
Hey, I had the theme music today.
Yay!
Yay! I did the work. I pulled the hard drive out and I went in there and I was like, all right, where's my damn music? And I found it. I found at least the original theme. That was not the punk theme that's been widely used. With me screaming in the background.
Hey!
Like a soccer hooligan. Anyway, so yeah, but it's nice to have a little bit of our some fanfare back. So yeah, welcome back to the pod, everybody. We've been on hiatus a little bit. Dustin's been out working or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've been at the film festival, right, Dustin?
I have been.
Yeah, how's that been?
We did the SCAD Savannah Film Festival. It's cool. I really kind of hunker down in one building and do all the tech there. So I got to see a bunch of cool stuff, and I'll have reviews for some of it coming up soon. Some of it, is small enough that there's no point in really doing a review for, like these little independent movies that no one will ever see anyway. But, I got to see some cool stuff.
Yeah, I love the film festival, and all of my my on this days on Facebook are all from the film festival, on from this week or that week. So for 8 days, every picture was like, oh, I remember that. It was
Vincent
always
D'Onofrio.
Yeah, and it's weird because they're all compounded experiences from 4 years of the film festival, so it's all compressed into 1 week of, do you remember when James Franco was there? Do you remember when Vincent D'Onofrio was there? Do you remember when Ian McKellen was there? Do you remember when Liam Neeson was there? It was really cool. Do you remember when James Cromwell was there? And and I remember
my favorite story about James Cromwell was he wasn't even an honoree. He just came, and when he did, John and I were across the street, and we saw him walk by us, and we were like, whoa, that looks like James Cromwell. We were just kind of laughing about it. And then not 10 minutes later, you come running out of the building and you're like, did you guys see James Cromwell? And we were like, what? And we freaked out because he had literally just walked right by us.
The two people I struck up the most conversation with at the film festivals were James Cromwell and Gerard Butler. And and the people I struck up the least conversation with were Malcolm McDowell.
Yep. I forgot he even came.
Malcolm McDowell has got to be in my top 5 of worst interactions with a human being, period. I fully regret every single word I said to him.
What did you say?
So John told me, he says, if you run into Malcolm, I was going to go work one of the events that night. I think I was working an after party. And he said, all right, well, if you see Malcolm McDowell, tell him that James T. Kirk will have his revenge. And it's because in some, I think Malcolm McDowell's character is the one who actually kills Captain Kirk. Yeah. Which I hadn't seen and didn't care about. And I just brushed it off. I was like, yeah, whatever. Sure, I'll say that. I'm not going to meet him. And then I end up guarding essentially that little velvet rope area they make for the VIPs. And so for some reason, I think at that point I had gotten to the point where I was essentially in charge of volunteers. So I sort of got to sit in there while they stood guard. It was kind of cool, actually, now that I think about it. And I have thoughts on that too. But anyway, so I sat down with Malcolm McDowell, and he's clearly, I don't know if I could be reading into this, but I felt in hindsight like he was a little bit who is this?
Yeah.
And I sat down and I said something like, how's it going? He was like, fine. And and I was like, so are you enjoying the festival? And he's like, yes. And I was like, okay. And I sat there, I was like, and there was no one sitting there talking to him. He was just by himself sitting there. And I was like, oh my God, like this is horrible. And I was like, say something.
Why did I do this?
And I was like, what have I seen of his? I was like, well, he was in Heroes, but does he want me to talk about Heroes? Well, there's not many other options, you know, like Clockwork Orange, and he rapes people. That's not a good conversation piece either. So
right.
I was like, okay, what did I say? And so I finally just turned. I was like, my friend said to tell you that James T. Kirk will have his revenge. I didn't even claim it was my idea. I fully said my friend
threw John under the bus.
I threw him totally under the bus, and he just sort of paused and he was like, "No, I don't think he will." And at that point I was like, okay. And I slowly just sort of like squunched away and then stood up when he wasn't looking and left.
Oh, that's classic.
And that's one of my largest regrets. But what else was I going to say? Like, hey,
right.
you know, in hindsight, you know, you just say something simple like, I'm glad you're enjoying the festival. Let me know if you need anything. Enjoy the party. That's all you say. But when you're, you know, 19, you feel like you have to flatter them or reference their work. And what they probably want most out of you is just a couple of kind words that have nothing to do with their work.
Right.
Unless you're super
service.
Yeah. Like I didn't scream, but I addressed Ben Foster by one of his character names. And and again, I keep saying in hindsight, but he was walking into the SCAD library and I just screamed, Jake Mazursky, because I had just seen Alpha Dog and that was his character's name. You know, of all his performances. I was like, oh yeah, Alpha Dog. And he turned and he said, hey, how's it going? I'm Ben. And he extended his hand. And I remember, you know, now I sit back and think like, I must have come off like a real douchebag, just like shouting a character name at him. But I didn't, you know, I wasn't berating him. But in hindsight, I look back and go, you know, he did extend me a courtesy by going, I'm going to give you one more chance to talk to me like a human being.
Yeah.
And,
totally.
and I shook his hand. I was like, and I'd said, hi, I'm Connor. And he's like, all right, hey, are you enjoying the festival? I said, yeah, of course I am. Are you? And he said, I'm having a great time. And I was like, all right, well, enjoy. And he sort of changed my perspective kind of right there. And I thought, oh my God, I can't believe I just talked to him like that. Yeah, I didn't say anything insulting, but I sort of, you know, dehumanized him a little bit. Yeah. And I thought differently about it after that. But that was like junior year, I think. I think I was already kind of growing up then anyway.
Right. Well, no, but then there are those actors that really enjoy that. Like, I don't know if you remember, I don't even remember if you were there with us this specific time when we met Emmy Rossum.
So I was working that event. You guys were all attending that event. So I was on the stage after the fact, and
gotcha.
My only interaction with her was that she turned and looked, and I happened to be looking her way, and she smiled. And I remember thinking, okay, that's fine with me, because I didn't know much of her work. And John was meeting, you know, what's his name from Friday Night Lights, and
well, yeah, and that's the thing. So at that event, Zach Gilford was also there because they were in the movie together.
Yep.
And like they had their handlers with them or whatever, and so after the Q&A, they came down and spoke to some of the students, and they were like shaking hands and taking pictures, and the handler was trying to get them out. And so I think Emmy had already left, and Zach was still there, but his handler was like, come on. And so like Zach's like going up the steps, like just you know, bounding up the steps, like, all right, I'm done here. And John, I guess we hadn't gotten far enough to go meet Zach yet, so John just yells, Matt Saracen, and just like you did with Ben Foster.
That's
but in
right.
this case,
I witnessed this.
Zach turned around like a complete 180 and told his handler, hold on a second, and went and literally like shook John's hand and was like, thank you so much for watching. Because that was like at a point where Friday Night Lights was like not getting any views.
Yep.
And so like they were so down in the ratings, and they were on the bubble year after year. And I think Zach just like took it like as a huge compliment that somebody was watching and was enjoying it. And so like he posed for a photo with John, and like, you know, like really genuinely enjoyed somebody calling him Matt Saracen. You know,
it was right by the side steps of the stage.
Yeah. So there's definitely two kinds of actors about that, where, some of them, yeah, if you were like Gandalf, Ian McKellen would be like, oh gosh, shut
Okay,
up.
cool. I
But
was also Macbeth, but okay.
right, yeah, why don't you remember me for something that was actually
Yeah.
challenging? But then there are, the other actors who, and maybe the divide is that, TV to film, or maybe it's, millennial, like young actor to, seasoned veteran, I don't know, um but yeah, Zach definitely appreciated it.
Yeah, I remember that. You're right. It's totally different depending on who it is. And do you remember at that same event, Adam Duritz was there, the Counting Crows singer,
Yes.
because he was with Emmy Rossum at the time,
Yeah.
and he was just sitting, he was just sitting on those same steps. He was
Yep.
just sitting there. And I'm pretty sure he was just like texting. He was just like, okay, I'll just wait till this event comes over. And to maybe most people, he just seemed like some crazy dude with dreadlocks who was just there. But
Yeah.
I'm sitting over there. I was like, I really want to walk over and talk to Adam Duritz and tell him like how much I enjoyed the Counting Crows, like especially in high school. But then I thought, like, I don't want to have to go through the whole, okay, we'll see ya, thing.
Right,
so I
right.
didn't do it. But yeah, anyway, film festival is great. If you're, this is such a narrow shot in the dark, but I mean, if you're listening and you're a SCAD student, like, definitely participate in the film festival. It's a great opportunity, even if you're just like, into celebrities and you want to see them in person. That's a good place to do it. But it's just a great festival to work, and it's a nice chance to see them and actually talk to them like people, and not just hear a bunch of sound bites like you're at a press junket,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Exactly. Yeah.
well, speaking of celebrities, we got some stuff to talk about. Dustin, I'm completely unprepared for this episode, but I'm going to do my damnedest.
Okay.
And I'm already kind of ahead because I actually saw a new release, and I believe you saw it too.
Would you be speaking of the third Thor film?
The third film.
The Thor third film.
Yeah, Thor Ragnarok came out on the earlier part of November. I think it
November
premiered
3rd,
on the
I think.
3rd. Yeah. So I waited. I was trying to see it with friends, and I was waiting for a friend to come in town, because not even it's a good friend. So Marvel doesn't trump good friendships. It trumps
Right.
other mediocre friendships.
Yes.
but not not a damn near 20-year long friendship.
Yeah.
So
You and I didn't even see Avengers on opening day because we were going to see it like a week later.
I remember that.
Yeah.
God, that was such a good experience. Anyway,
Right.
okay, so I love you, Dustin.
I miss you too, Hoop.
So all right, so Ragnarok, Thor Ragnarok is the name of the film. It's the third film in the Thor franchise. It's, I think, the 10th or 11th Marvel. I'm losing track of where they are in the MCU.
A lot.
It is written by Eric Pearson, Craig Kyle, and IMDb is telling me there are 4 more credits. I think there was it's not mentioning it here. Eric Pearson, Craig Kyle, Christopher Yost, and then there's Stanley, Larry Lieber, Jack Kirby, based on stuff. But I think there's a 4th writer who's actually a woman who's uncredited. It's probably a percentage of screenplay thing. It's probably a WGA thing. But anyway, there is a 4th writer. And it is directed by Taika Waititi. I don't know that much about him. I've not seen any other films, but people said going into this, he's funny, and he's a New Zealander, and he's, it'll be an interesting take. He directed What We Do in the Shadows, which is a mockumentary thing about vampires, which I really want to see, knowing that now.
It's on Amazon Prime.
Okay, I'll check it out. And then Hunt for the Wilder People, which was highly praised last year as well.
Yep.
So this film does for people like him what it's supposed to do, which is it makes you want to check out their other work. Like, why, so, that's just that's a piece of the Marvel machine that I'm on board with, is it exposes you to people like him, who I never would have known about that guy. Even me being into movies, I wouldn't have given him the time of day. And now I want to know all about him because I really enjoyed this film. This film, in this movie, Thor essentially Thor goes toe to toe with Hela, the goddess of death. She breaks his hammer, as you saw in the trailer. She essentially causes him to be lost and abandoned on this planet, where he is, his golden locks are cut. He's thrown into the gladiator ring, and as you see in the trailer, runs into his old pal Bruce Banner as the Hulk. Yep. And which is odd because, what's he doing out there?
Right.
He's also reunited with his brother Loki, and together they all kind of go on a quest to stop Hela and prevent Ragnarok, which is, I think it is kind of categorized as the fall of Asgard.
Yeah.
And that's the basic plot of this film. I will say that I want to start with the good stuff. I enjoyed the film on the whole. I think it was the right move. Ragnarok accomplishes a few things at once. It sort of visually and tonally brings Thor more in line with Guardians of the Galaxy, which is probably needed considering, it was the first, when they first did phase 1 of Marvel, Dustin, you remember like all the characters had their own thing, their own world. And then the big question going into the Avengers was, are they going to be able to mix tones? Because so far Iron Man's very, comedic. Thor is very serious. Captain America is very altruistic. How are they going to blend all these tones together? And they did it beautifully by essentially poking holes in everyone's egos throughout the Avengers.
Yeah.
And then there was no need for that with Ultron. And so, but going into Infinity War, you sort of need to you're bringing in more characters who have never been on screen together, like the Guardians, with the Avengers. So how do you do that? And so I think Ragnarok accomplishes, again, visually, there's a lot more color in this film than in previous Thor movies. And there's a lot broader of a world scope, I think, in this film than previous Thor movies. And just sort of, again, just visually ties into more to the Guardians. And it also does for the Thor character what I think probably had to be done, which was they essentially sat down and said, okay, so Thor is super serious and we're thinking that's a problem. And we've got a great actor in Chris Hemsworth who's gifted comedically, and it doesn't get to showcase it at all. And it's sort of time that we sort of like take the piss out of Thor a little bit and, roll with it and with a bit of a lighter, more self-effacing tone. And I think that worked. I think this movie's really funny. The first part of it's got a lot more, probably overstuffed with jokes, and the pace is kind of off. Like up until a certain character exits the film in the beginning on a cliff face. Yep. It's not great with pace.
Yeah.
As soon as that happens and the plot starts going, it changes and it gets better, and then it's good from then on in terms of jokes versus jokes, plot, momentum. That's all clicks at that point. And characters especially, I think, pop. Anyway, I think the good of Thor is definitely the tone is an improvement. And I think it keeps you engaged more than certainly than the Dark World did. I liked the Dark World fine, but I acknowledge that it has many faults that are bigger deals to a lot of people. And I think most people thought the Dark World was kind of a letdown and just sort of a generic cardboard cutout film that was schedule based and not story based. So I think Ragnarok's a definite improvement on that. I don't know. What did you think, Dustin?
So I've been actually sort of ruminating on this. I saw it 2 days ago. So I've been trying to sort of bring my thoughts out because I felt really conflicted for a lot of reasons, and so I guess up front, I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed leaving the theater, but I think that was more because of the fact that it's got like a 90 whatever on Rotten Tomatoes, and I saw an article like a couple days before I saw it that said it was like officially the fourth or fifth best reviewed superhero movie of all time according to Rotten Tomatoes, just numbers wise and all. And maybe it was just sold, I heard it's like the best comedy Marvel's ever made. And, it was sold to me in a lot of, sort of hyperbolic ways, so that when I saw it, there was really no way to not be let down by it. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just, disappointed because of my expectations and not like, okay, the film has problems. So I've been trying to kind of tease out my thoughts. But I think what it boils down to for me, obviously on the first viewing, the initial impression is disappointing for me. But I did jot down a few of my thoughts over the last couple days, and I can go through them pretty quickly. But before I do, I want to hit some of the good things. You're right. Chris Hemsworth is great. This is sort of exactly what Thor should have been from the beginning. Cocky, but like in a funny, likable way, not in a boring, stale way. And then, to populate it with a world full of, crazy characters like an insect with swords for hands, is so goofy, but at the same time, it's almost exactly what Thor calls for. So I wholeheartedly agree with you that this is sort of the direction that Thor should have taken. It is a step up from the Dark World. I didn't really like Thor: Dark World. I thought it was forgettable. I think was my main gripe there. But I didn't hate it. I just thought it was forgettable.
Thor: The Dark World is just good for the action set pieces, but in terms of story and character and all that stuff, like it's a nothing. He doesn't change or grow. The supporting characters are trash.
Right. The only thing I remember is that it was overly funny, or overly trying to be funny, and that final set piece where they're sort of like teleporting in and out of space time, which I thought was cool. And so you have that kind of stuff sticks with you, but really everything else I don't remember anything else. Like if you said like Natalie Portman's character Jane Foster, I'd be like, I don't remember what she did in the movie. I have no recollection of it.
So in this film they mentioned like that she dumped him, and he's like, no, it was mutual dumping. Like I dumped her, know. And I remember thinking like, good riddance, because I mean, God love Natalie Portman, but even if you defend her, there was nothing for her to do in these films. And I'm not, and again, I was thinking about the comedy in this versus the comedy in the Dark World, and I was like, the big difference obviously is the overall tone, and they didn't allow Thor himself to be funny. In the Dark World, it was all these side characters, these sidekicks, just like cracking one-liners, instead of the character and the situation being funny within the context of the story.
Right, like you have the Darcy character played by whatever her name is,
Kat Dennings.
And you're and
who is funny.
Yeah, but, exactly. But the difference is, like you said, Thor was the straight man to everyone else's like crazy oddball character.
Yeah.
And like Selvig's running around naked and all. And then you have, which is something that no one ever needs to see. And then you have, in this one, Thor is the one cracking the jokes, which is a huge difference and exactly where it should have gone. Because Thor is at his best, even if you think back to the first movie, he's at his best when he was sort of the fish out of water who was funny because he didn't know Earth customs.
Right.
So the thing that comes to mind is when he drinks his coffee and smashes the cup on the ground and says, "I shall have another." It's like that sort of fish out of water kind of stuff is really funny and really suits the character well. So they just kind of took the wrong step with Thor at some point.
But I will say this though, I like to think that his change in demeanor is in context of the story, and the way I like to justify that is I like to think that from his time on Earth and around people like Stark, you know, that the fact that by the third film of his, he's in this state of mind, I think I like to think that's totally a product of being around his teammates for so long instead of around a bunch of other Shakespearean people. Like it's kind of like when you're around, when you go to other countries and you travel and talk to other people, all of a sudden the way you think is really different because you're away from home, and all of a sudden you've picked up on other customs and stuff, and you come back a different person. And I like to think that Thor, you know, that was good for him as this sort of self-righteous badass of someone who traveled, went to Earth, sort of learned not to take himself so seriously because he got poked at by people like Tony Stark, who called him Point Break. And he came back, and, you know, this is Asgard and the Nine Realms and all that super serious place. And he's cutting off a guy in the middle of his monologue because the chain is spinning around. And again, I thought that joke went on too long, but I like to think that you know, again, you can look at it from what really happened is on the outside, they said Thor needs to be funnier and this needs to be more of a comedy. But I like to justify that in context by pointing out that works within character.
I think that's a valid justification. Right. I don't. In other words, I don't think that's a reach. Like, sure, it's definitely more implied than you know, overt, but it's definitely his comedy now is more in line with a Tony Stark kind of comedy. So to say that he learned it from Tony, I think, you know, I don't think that's reaching. I think you're fine. You know, the problem I would have more would be like if Odin then started doing the same thing, and then it's like, all right, well now, like now you're going too far. But he doesn't. Like it's all, you know, it's all very it's all in character. It does feel like it's in character still, which is important, especially when you're taking a character in a new direction. Because by and large those things don't work. You know, I'll praise the direction. I think it was great. I think the visual effects are stunning. I think that you know, what they're able to do with Hulk specifically, in making him look like Mark Ruffalo and then still like Hulk, I think is great. You know, that's only improving with every time we see Hulk. You know, and to the point where now when you look back and you see like the Eric Bana Hulk, it's like, ooh, like I know that's supposed to look like Eric Bana, but God Almighty. But like, you know, it's impressive. Up there with like Andy Serkis levels of you know, mocap. I think that I would also have to praise, you know, the dialogue. I think that it's all well written. I think that the like I said, everything's in character, and still, I don't know that there's a joke that falls flat. You know what I mean? Like when I saw it in the theater, it felt like everybody was laughing when they should have been laughing, and there wasn't like, oh, that's not really all that funny. You know, so you got to give them credits there. You know, for me though, some of the problems, I think, you know, you alluded to that first part being, you know, weird pacing wise. Without spoiling it, he does make a visit to another MCU character, and when he does, although I don't know that that's really a spoiler, like if you've seen the other movie, you would know. But that you know what I'm talking about, Hooper?
Yes, I do.
It seems very shoehorned. It didn't really, like, you could take it out and it wouldn't really matter. So to me, yeah, that sort of slowed down the film by quite a bit.
I wasn't thinking too much about that, but now that you think about it, like, not only does that seem like unnecessary, but his meeting with that person, like, to him, like, from Thor's perspective, is so insignificant that you think, like, really? Like, I would think this is a sort of interesting thing that you ran into this person who can do these things, and and you sort of just don't question why he's helping you, and you know, but that's one of those that's one of the Marvel things that I sort of just accept at this point is like, they gotta, they have to continue to, upsell everybody. So whatever.
Right.
But when you think about that, it's like, oh yeah, that, for this film, that didn't really need to be there.
Yeah. I mean,
it works as a stinger just fine for that character's solo film.
Right.
So why do you have to include essentially an alternate take of that scene in this film? Because throughout the whole scene, I was like, all right, his cup's going to fill all the way back up. I was like, because I've seen this before. It's a stinger. Like, I got it. We saw this.
Exactly. So, for that reason, I'm looking at it on the outside and just saying like, yeah, I can see the mechanisms behind it. And I can also see that if it were removed, it would not be hard to do the exact same thing with another character or just not do that at all. Essentially it's a stepping stone to the next objective. And you could have done the same thing with Loki and have it just be Loki. And it feels more focused, story-wise. I felt like, should we go into spoilers or are we gonna?
I would say no, because it's still in theaters. If it was out for rent, I'd say go for it. But,
okay. So let me rephrase some of this then. So the other problem I had, from the trailer, the Hulk appears. I also just mentioned it. The cat's out of the bag. For me, I thought that the coincidence of how Thor ends up on that planet, and it just so happens that Hulk is also on that planet. That's a big coincidence in the cosmos that are as big as Guardians of the Galaxy Presents. That's a huge coincidence. I suppose at this point in time, I should just sort of let it roll and say, all right, but it's Marvel and they do this thing where it's all interconnected. But at the same time, it's like, man, but it's just so unlikely. Like that's unlikely on Earth for two people to be in the same place at the same time. Imagine, of all the times and space and multiverses that's where they end up. That's so crazy to me.
So this is one of those times, Dustin, where I think, so from a business perspective, you need to just think, okay, so obviously it's no more coincidental than movie things, typically are.
Well, but I feel like you could have, if the mandate came down like, okay, Hulk needs to be in this, there's to me, there's a better way to do it where you say, okay, Thor ends up on a planet fighting as a gladiator, and it turns out that he finds some clue that Hulk may have been there, right? Like they're walking around with the Hulk, masks or whatever. And he's like, whoa, like Hulk's been here. And then, I hate to derail the movie and it becomes a hunt for Hulk. But at the same time, like if you're going up against this, evil, Empress, you're going to want all the help that you can get. And it would make sense then to sort of spin the movie for a few minutes, as a hunt for Hulk, and maybe they go to a couple different planets or, even, on that same planet, just a few different places that are, different play, like vistas, to quote Red Letter Media, they're different vistas. And then that way you kind of get to showcase the world, you get to showcase the planet, whatever. But at the same time, like it doesn't feel as coincidental. Like he doesn't just get dropped right where Hulk is. It's like I'm gonna go look for him because I believe he's here and I need his help. And then at that point you sell me on it better because, okay, yeah, they're still on the same planet or whatever, but at the same time, it's not like I dropped into his lap. So in other words, just make Thor work for it a little bit. Like, don't just say like, up and here you go. And here's Valkyrie and here's Hulk. And they're all right there for you. It's like, make us work. Like make us see him work for his team a little bit. It would be my, like if somebody were like, all right, Dustin, here's the script, doctor it. Like that would be my note. Like let's work for these characters a little bit. They don't just get dropped onto Thor's, like here's a silver platter, here's Hulk. It's, a little bit of a task. And then lastly, I think probably majorly here, I don't. I want to ask you what you feel like Thor's arc was, because I don't think he had one.
Okay, so I'm a bit slow on the uptake, but let me take a
I know I
crack at.
put you on the spot. I put you on the spot.
I
My
know
bad.
it's okay. I think. Oh boy, I don't know because oh god, my instinctive answer is there wasn't one. Like, I sit there and think about it, and it's like, well, where was he at the beginning of the film? And he was, getting stuff in service of the crown, kind of, but there wasn't really one. Like, it's sort of like a weird piece of his overall arc, which is like, towards being the king of Asgard. But when you really think about it, it's like he didn't. It's not like in the first movie where he is completely unqualified for for leadership,
Yeah.
and then at the end he becomes qualified and still neglects, rejects the prospect of doing it. And in the second one, I can't remember what the arc was supposed to be there, but in this one, he starts off, he's looking for those horn thingies. He gets them. He comes back, and it's almost like he comes back to Asgard, and it's like the first time he's been there since the last movie. And only then is he like, oh, something's wrong with Odin.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's sort of so. Oh yeah, there's not one, is there?
Well, I mean, even if you compare it to the other three movies, right? Like Cap 3. If you're comparing this to Civil War, Tony's presented with an ethical, moral dilemma in that film that he has to, really grapple with. And then even Iron Man 3, Tony deals with, okay, who am I without the suit? Does the suit make me, or you know what I mean? Like it's. I do feel like there's an actual arc that's completed in both of those films, and with Thor 3, with this one, it feels like Thor's goal is, okay, I have to get back and protect Asgard. And then, but that's not really a satisfying emotional arc. That is a story, but I wouldn't call it an arc. I'd call it a story, right? Like there's a difference. And so even just comparing it to the other, third installments of Marvel movies, I feel like it falls short in that emotional conclusionary kind of way. Even though Iron Man 3 is not the conclusion, and Civil War is not the conclusion, but it feels like, we've reached a point with this character where they've kind of learned something, and I don't get the same thought from Thor, and that's not to say that this is automatically a terrible movie or a bad script. It's just to say that they just didn't go there, and so for me, it makes it harder to root for the character, because I don't know I know what's at stake, but I don't know what really within his soul is at stake, or what he's trying to figure out about himself, or what we're supposed to figure out about him. And so it makes it harder to kind of really latch on to him. And so it's an odd choice for this film, because clearly, like, again, sort of what I'm thinking, if the script comes across my desk and I'm the doctor and I'm like, okay, let me write this down, the thought is, okay, well, use all of these experiences, as a gladiator and as whatever to at the end of the film, it teaches him something, right? That he went through all of these experiences, and throughout the film, these tiny little vignettes of, okay, gladiator, now I'm leading a rebellion, essentially against Grandmaster, and all of this stuff kind of culminates in what he finds out at the end. So when you have your climactic battle, it's like, at the risk of being cliche or whatever, it's so easy to have the villain, grab Thor by the neck and say, look at your people, look what you've done. And then that's when Thor has this realization, right? This huge thing that, look at all this stuff that I just went through, over the past, 2 hours. And look how it's now shaping how I'm seeing Asgard and how I'm seeing my people. And to their defense, I think they thought they had it. Like they had this, Asgard's not a place, it's a people kind of mentality at the end. But that didn't, like, there was nothing there to like that wasn't Thor's goal, was to figure out whether Asgard was a place or a people, and it wasn't supported by the theme of the film, and it wasn't, you know what I mean, like it didn't add on to the arc that had been established from the beginning, which you established through the character's goals and then through the obstacles to reach said goal. And so I felt like, yes, he does a lot of cool things and he does a lot of big things, but none of it really informs him until right at the end. He just sort of out of nowhere has this realization that was not planted 90 minutes before in the first act. It was just there, boom. And so it was like, it was almost like at the last minute they're like, oh crap, we don't have an arc, just give him something, and then boom. And so to me, like, again, it does not automatically disqualify the film. That's not what I'm saying. It does, however, I think, make it lesser than an Iron Man 3 or a Civil War emotionally.
Interesting. Yeah, I think for better or worse, the film was aiming lower than that. I think their goal was, we need to make a different and memorable Thor film, and I think maybe possibly in the same way that Spider-Man did. I think they said so. At least we need to generically not offend anybody, and
Sure.
hopefully make an impression tonally, and visually, and and again, for better or worse, like, for me, like, I paid money just to go see a movie, so like my expectation is just show me something exciting that's not going to be stupid. But yeah, when you break it down, the way you are, like, it is. When you look at this film compared to everything else in the MCU and everything, and its effects on the overall story, and also like as a character piece of Thor himself, what really comes across is, when you come down to talking about his arc, like, it is the continuation of his journey towards being ready for leadership, and this is a final piece into that. But and I guess the lesson for him was, like, the final lesson was, you can't, in a manner of speaking, not phrased very well, but you can't be too attached to, I don't know, the idea of something, I guess. But as a standalone film, that arc, I will agree, is not very exciting or compelling. Like, the events and plot elements and stuff, kind of are, clearly. I mean, I enjoyed the film, but if you're gonna ask me, like, what's the best story arc for Thor, it's obviously the first one.
Yeah. Well, I want to agree with you and lend credence to what you just said, where, you said, I went in and I was looking for, the spectacle of it, right? Like, I was looking for cool stuff. And to that end, like, I wholeheartedly agree, and you can't. So I think this is an apt analogy. Time will tell. Comments will tell me that. So I think it's like, if you go to Burger King, right? You get like a burger and you pay a few dollars and you get this burger and you sit down and it's a fine burger and it does its job, right? It fills you up. You're not hungry for a few hours. Like, you're fine. But like, you can also go get like a gourmet burger and spend, $30 getting like, a grass-fed, Angus beef patty with, melty cheddar cheese and like provolone and like aged, I don't know, applewood smoked bacon, like, just piled high, right? And you're paying through the nose for it, but essentially it does the same thing. It's just that your expectations are different of those two things, and the same person can enjoy both of those burgers, just for different reasons, right? And so I think it's the same way with movies, and I think this is a good example where okay, so Civil War or Iron Man 3 is aiming a little higher. So maybe they're not the gourmet and they're not the Burger King. Maybe they're in the middle somewhere, like it's the Five Guys, right? Like they're good burgers. They're a little more expensive. They're aiming a little higher. They're good burgers, but all three burgers are burgers, right? Like all it takes is just an adjustment of your expectation, and depending on what you want, you're gonna like any of those burgers. So I don't know. Maybe that's a terrible analogy, and maybe it only makes sense in my head.
I'm just so hungry right now.
I know. Maybe it only makes sense in my head. Brought to you by Five Guys.
I'm just drooling on my microphone.
but like it makes sense in my head that like if you go into Thor Ragnarok and you're expecting this gourmet meal, you're going to be disappointed. But if you go into Thor Ragnarok and you're expecting a Burger King, you're like, dang, like this is good. Because everybody goes to Burger King sometimes and just goes, man, that's so good, and it's not, but it is, and that's the same way, and so I don't know, maybe that's not a great analogy. I don't know.
Well, I think that I think that people who are going out to the theaters to see Ragnarok are going to get, I think they're going to get a pretty good deal for their money. I think they're going to get a lot of good spectacle, a lot of good jokes. I think that Jeff Goldblum is so funny in this movie. He's great, obviously. Ruffalo. So I was talking to John about Ruffalo, and I was like, part of me thought that I would want more Banner and Hulk in the film. Relatively, when you think about it, like his overall like presence in the movie, it's not that much. And then when you think about it, it's like, well, but he's a supporting character. He's not supposed to have his own
right
arc. He's just sort of there. And it's like it's hard sometimes for people like us to see the film without seeing the seams. Like we know that like the meeting had to have happened. There's always some meeting that happens where they go, how about we put the Hulk in this film? And it's obviously better with him, but there are small parts of me that think that the movie could have been done without him.
But I don't think I'd want the movie without him. Maybe it could have been done without him.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either, but you could have had Korg fight the giant wolf.
Sure.
And you could have found a way to justify it. Like, and that's, I agree. I would not want this film without the Hulk. I think it's great with him, but they really glossed over how Banner is out there, and I was really expecting a lot clearer of an explanation for how he got there, and I was a little bit disappointed with that lack of the answer essentially is he just is. And it's like, great, I've been waiting for like 3 years for this answer, and your answer is he just is. Like, okay, that's fine.
Right.
So I was kind of pissed off about that. But I still accept that the movie is not the movie without the Hulk, but he's a supporting character. Like, so if you are looking for an arc for Banner, the biggest one is a piece of one going into Infinity War, which is the idea that usually when I'm the Hulk, I feel like we both have a hand on the steering wheel, and I think if I relinquish control again, I might never come back.
Yep.
And the film, not to spoil anything, but the film, Ruffalo, he's the Hulk, and he's briefly, Banner again. He's the Hulk again, and the film ends with him as Hulk.
Yep.
So the assumption for me is the Infinity War begins with him as Hulk. He can talk, he can think, he can converse as Hulk. He doesn't need to be Banner to accomplish story beats. So perhaps perhaps Banner's arc, isolated by itself, is a setup meant to be paid off for Infinity War. And so in that sense, Hulk accomplishes little more than being the muscle present in the Thor storyline, which is acceptable to me because he's a supporting character who's not set up to have an arc. But I still think, okay, it would be nice to have a tiny piece of development for him. But I at the same time, it's not his movie. It's not even an ensemble piece. He's part of the action, and anyway.
Can I just say how cool it would be to see Hulk like that battle between Hulk and Banner, like literally just seeing the Hulk and then sort of like zooming in and you just see like all black and just Ruffalo standing in darkness, and he's like in there like almost like Get Out or
Yeah,
11 like in the deprivation tank.
He's in the sunken place.
Yeah, he's in the sunken place, and he's like, no, 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 like, and he can't control Hulk at all. Like that would be awesome.
I really would like to see like what. Yeah, I agree. It would be cool to see what Banner sees, if he sees anything during this time where Hulk is totally in control. And for him to just be able to look at all this, like, but then again, they established that he has no memory. He doesn't know he's been the Hulk for 2 years. He doesn't know where he is. Yeah. So I guess maybe that's their way of avoiding that. But I agree. That'd be so interesting to see him like being able to clearly see what's happening and him going, stop hurting people. Stop smashing, stop it, please. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think that we're creeping up on some time here, but I think I do think that Ragnarok is worth the price of admission, for sure. I think if you're, like us, into the nuts and bolts of these Marvel films, there are obviously going to be problems. I think by now in the MCU, you sort of at least can expect stuff like that to happen, and it really comes down to, do you I don't know, the weight you place on stuff like that should be pre-established by this point, but they are present, and there's going to be things like how does Mark Ruffalo know how to fly a spaceship just like that?
Right, sure. He's a bit of a Mary Sue.
Why if a heat signature is all it takes to find a cluster of rebels, why doesn't Hela, is there no way she can find them? She spends the whole movie looking for them, and then it's just like, boom, here's heat signatures. There's where they are.
I didn't even talk about Hela, but so super briefly. So I'm always the naysayer who's like, the villain is bad in these movies. I actually liked Hela. I thought maybe she's not like super layered, but I do think that she did her job and she was threatening, and I enjoyed it. So yeah.
It's weird because I'm for once I'm flopping onto where you usually are.
We cannot agree, Hooper.
I'm not totally over on that camp, but I think that Hela is very simple, and maybe that doesn't put us in opposite camps. I think that her basic, it's just there's an expository scene where it's like, by the way, Hela exists, and then there's fairy dust that happens, and then Hela, appears, and the conflict begins, and at the same time, I do like and respect and appreciate that she represented the tearing down of something, that you can't really argue with. It's sort of like when someone comes in and says, hey, by the way, do you know Christopher Columbus raped Indians? It's like, what? He did?
Yeah. Right.
And when you were shown like proof, it's like, oh my God. And and it's like, well, what are you supposed to do at that point? And people react appropriately. Like it was interesting, and I guess maybe it was refreshing to see essentially an opposing point of view that forced our hero to be intellectually honest while still maintaining a position that he would, see through despite what was put in front of him, because it was still like, okay, you're right, but you still can't do this.
Oh, man, I just thought of what the arc should have been, yo.
What was it, Dustin?
I can't say it because of spoilers, but yo. Oh. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You
just sparked my creativity, Hoopa.
I like Hela, and I like Kate Blanchett. She completely owns the role, and she's very charismatic.
Yeah.
and she has
elevates
interesting.
it for
She has she has interesting abilities. I don't want to say that Hela herself is not an asset to this film. I just think that the idea of all of a sudden I'm here and this is how I want to word this carefully. This is why I'm significant to you in particular, and this is why I'm your enemy, and I'm all of a sudden here, and I'm gonna tear down everything you're about. And it's like, okay, it's a little bit, but okay. I mean, there's another side to that where I go, I like that there's a personal connection with her, instead of just Malekith, like, I hate you, Thor, because I do, and I picked up the script and it says I hate you.
And it said I hate you.
So overall I like Hela. I have to sit there and think, okay, well, would I tolerate this from others? So whatever. But I like Thor Ragnarok. I'm excited to own it. It's an improvement on the Thor character. It's an improvement on the Thor franchise. It adequately and appropriately sets up whatever happens next cosmically, which is, I guess, Infinity War. So it puts Thor himself and all his associated characters in a good place, in my opinion, tonally. So for that reason, I think people should see it. I think if you're a Marvel fan, you ought to see it. If not, just because you're a completist. But I think general audiences will like it just simply because it's an action comedy with characters that they probably love.
And as always, I pick on these a little bit. Not really, but I am more critical, I guess. But at the same time, I also would recommend it. I do like it. I think it could have very easily reached a higher bar than it did.
All right. All right, Dustin, real quick, I want to talk about stuff that's coming out this weekend.
Okay.
We will further discuss this on our mini-sode, but I'm looking ahead at what's opening this week, and the only significant thing is Roman J. Israel Esquire. No, I'm just kidding.
Which I'm super excited for.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Denzel. It's the Justice League is coming out this weekend.
Yep. Yeah.
And our thoughts are well known on this film.
Yep.
So have you seen, here's my question. Have you seen any trailer or promotional material for this film that has caused you to think perhaps there is reason to be excited for this?
Nothing singular that I can point to. I will say I'm a little more optimistic than I thought I would be. Some of the reviews, and I haven't read the reviews, but some of the reviews have been fairly positive. At least saying it's fun. And again, it's just like with any of these Marvel movies, even the lesser ones. Like, if they're fun, I can excuse a lot of things. So I don't know. There's nothing singular. I will say this. My hopes are higher for this than they should be. But I do not think it's going to be a good movie. It's a weird place to be in, because I'm like, it'll be good, but I don't think it'll be good.
Yeah.
But that's exactly where I am. Like, I thought I would be like, oh no, this is going to be garbage, and it is just going to be garbage. But I'm like, it's probably going to be good, but not good. So it's an improvement.
I'm just so...
Where are you at with this?
I just don't care.
And that's the big thing is, like, I think I said this on the podcast one time before, but like, the latest trailer, the last trailer that they released for this, starts with like Lois Lane looking at Clark in a cornfield, and literally that played before Thor. And I leaned over to my fiance and I just said, "Can this whole movie just be about Lois, please?"
Yep.
Like, that would have been so much better to me, is just make Lois the protagonist and make it her journey. And been like, Superman may or may not be back. Like, maybe he's dead and I'm trying to move on with my life and whatever. Like, that to me is so much more interesting than like red skies and flying fishmen. I don't care.
See, my opinion is 3 of these characters I've never met before. So... Yeah. I'm supposed to care about that, and I'm sure they
were on a YouTube video that Wonder Woman watched. Don't you remember?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's sort of like, part of me thinks, oh, so it's weird because it's like you want us to rely on the existing construct of these characters, while at the same time rewriting and completely repurposing these characters. And it's like, okay, so either you're relying on my affection for, you know, Aquaman, or you want me to embrace the new Aquaman, but you can't do both without first showing me an Aquaman film.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, like, I like Aquaman probably more than most people, but I don't know this Aquaman. I have no affection for him.
Yeah,
all I've ever seen him do is swim towards a camera with a trident.
You've also seen a trailer where he rides on the Batmobile and then he shouts, "Yeah!" and just sort of vaguely jumps at an alien robot bug alien man, and presumably to his death, he is caught by Cyborg. He then refers to him as "my man." And Cyborg, you know, flies holding him with zero effort and zero weight consideration, you know, and just sort of throws him back toward the battle. You know, Aquaman's just a rag doll who gets to be thrown around in battles.
It's like Aquaman.
This shit is bananas.
The way you just described his dialogue, it's like somebody had a soundboard of like Jason Momoa clips, and all they had was access to him saying "man," and so they just put like a random word in front of it, like "oh man, my man," and like that's the whole movie is just.
Hold on, man.
Hold on, man. Stop right there, man. I'm Aquaman, man. Like, that's all it is. And like. Oh my gosh. Like we've also, to be fair, we've also seen him drink booze shirtless in the ocean. So he's automatically cool, ? Mm-hmm. But I think I don't know, man. It's like, now I'm talking like Aquaman, but I don't know.
He's got Mondo sex appeal, yo.
No, he doesn't.
He's got them tats.
The tattoos and the hair and the beard, and it's just like
nothing says I want to do sex like fish. Yep. This film,
I don't want to here. Look, I like Aquaman fine, but I don't want to be saved by that Aquaman. Like, if that Aquaman saved my life, I'd just be like, oh God, kill me. Just jam the trident in my chest now.
You smell.
Because all he'd want to do is like play ultimate frisbee with me or something.
You smell like fish and weed.
He just want to he just want to sit down and smoke a bowl and play Dave Matthews Band on the guitar, like under a tree.
This like film. It just, and again, maybe it can be good, but I almost feel like, I really do, and I don't have any evidence for this, so this is just purely my assumption and my feeling on this. I think that some critics are giving this film kid gloves because they want it to be somewhat on par with Marvel. And again, like, I don't want to be a Marvel apologist and say that everything they do is great, but I think that some people don't want to come out and hit the Justice League film. I think some people don't want to say, look, there's a lot of issues, and honestly, I don't know if it's worth, the price of admission. And I just don't think I think they think it would be mean. And I don't want to accuse critics of being subjective like that, but I can't help but think that they're like, okay, I really don't want to be mean to this film because it's their, hey, give them a chance. But it just speaks to the whole way that this was handled. Like this, it should have been done like the damn Avengers was. They should have each had their own movie. You should have done the work to establish the character and have us care about them, and then join them up, and then we care. And I really am bothered by the fact that they want to put them all in a film just to be somewhat on schedule with Marvel, and they're going to skip 3 solo films and make me care about 3 people when there's no reason to, other than I recognize them, and that bothers me.
Yeah. See, and I've always been of the mindset, like, I don't think they all necessarily have to have a solo film before we can, whatever. But at the same time, I'm like, But
the thing is, before you say that,
unrecognizable as the characters.
Well, that's the thing. So they're unrecognizable. But the thing is, it's not even some of them. It's not even like the fact that maybe a couple of them don't need a solo film. Most of these characters have not had a solo film.
Right. Well. So my thing is I always go back to Justice League, the animated series, and it's like, okay, the pilot of that, they had Superman and they had Batman, and everyone else they had to establish right there in the pilot. They had to establish Wonder Woman. And obviously the bar is much lower because it's for kids. It's a cartoon, whatever. But they did a fine job of establishing all of that. But here's why it worked. It worked because you rode the back of Kevin Conroy's Superman and the animated series. Kevin Conroy's Batman and the animated series Superman, and you rode on their backs, so you knew them so well that when you saw those characters through the eyes of those sort of like catalyst characters, you like what they thought of those characters, you thought of those characters. But as it is, like, I don't even know Ben Affleck's Batman at all. Like, and what I do know, I hate. So why would I trust if he's like, this Flash kid seems like a good kid? Well, I don't care what you think. Like, clearly you have issues, and I don't know you, so I don't trust your opinion. And that's the thing, is like, regardless of whether they should have had their own solo film, you can establish, like, you have all these ensemble films, like you can name a bunch of them, and they are able to establish a ton of characters. Any war movie establishes a ton of characters, and some of them do it by boiling those characters down to archetypes in the first act, so that then you can get to know them over the course. But right up front, they're like archetypes, and you can do it that way, and that would have been fine. But the problem is, you have to have a character through whose eyes you see those other characters. And I don't see that here because I don't like any of the characters. The only character I like is Wonder Woman, and she's clearly not the one saying we need a Justice League. It's Batman, and I kind of disagree with that decision in the first place.
The thing is, like,
you done got me riled up, Hoopa.
I don't even know. I don't even know where to go next. Like, look, if you want to see Justice League this weekend, that's fine, and I hope it's better than I think it's going to be. But I just have so many fundamental problems with how it's being executed that, well, one, like, I wasn't planning on, it's no secret, I wasn't planning on seeing this film in theaters. It really, at all, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I will, for the sake of, eventually on the rental circuit, but I'm not going to see this in theaters. I have no interest in it. I just, my impression, like any other movie I choose not to see, is and I'm allowed to think this, is I just don't think it's going to be worth my money. And that's just the way it is. So, other people might go, hey, look, it's all the superhero movies are the same. It's just a bunch of explosions and super powered, super strength characters. And okay, like, if you think that Ragnarok and the Justice League are essentially the same, that's great, but I thought that one was worth my money and one wasn't, and I made a choice, and I'm pretty happy with it. So, you be the judge.
Allow me to make a prediction. I do predict that I will like this movie more than I think I will, because and the only reason I say that is because my expectations are not high, and and here's my expectation too. I like, sue me, but I like Henry Cavill's Superman. And if they're able to course correct that Superman, if they're able to do what they did with Thor and make him likable and make him smile, then his scenes alone will soften my heart. But
again, his death and his coming back from death is the perfect opportunity to reboot him as a happier, more hopeful character. Like, have him face death and go, oh my God, like death, and then wake up and go, I serve a greater purpose than, what, like, it's the perfect opportunity to have to reboot someone within the canon of their own story.
Yep. I know I keep going back to this, but that scene in the cornfield, right? Like Superman smiles and he's like charming. And I'm like, yes, like that's the movie I want. And if they're able to give me that even for 15 minutes, like, fine, I'll take it. And I'll probably come out saying, at least I got it. But everything surrounding it, like we're saying, like the Aquaman stuff, and I'm committed to Grant Gustin's Flash, and all of this stuff that I don't know this Cyborg, right? I like the character of Cyborg, but I don't know anything about this Cyborg in this movie. I just don't think I'm going to get that from any of the other characters. So my expectations are low, but I feel like it'll be higher if they're just able to stick the landing of Superman. If they're able to make that happen, I think I'll like it more than I think I will, because that's what I want. That's all I want is a good Superman. Like, for crying out loud, like that's what I've wanted for my whole entire life, is a good Superman. And, sue me.
Well, we'll see with Justice League. It's definitely gonna. Do you think it's gonna take the number one spot from Thor this weekend?
I think it will. It will. When it went on sale, it crashed the Fandango site. There were that many people pre-ordering, so I think it'll take the top spot. But I will say, if it doesn't, man, that would be hilarious.
First of all, it'd be hilarious. The second of all, here's my prediction. It takes over Thor opening weekend, but the second weekend, Thor takes it back.
What comes out on the 22nd, though? I thought there was some... Oh, the new Pixar movie comes out on the 22nd. I think that'll steal it from Justice League.
I still think Thor makes more money than Justice League on Thor's 4th and Justice League's 2nd weekend.
It's very possible.
I would love to see that. That'd be super satisfying. All right. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this episode. If you want to see more of us, just come back to our channel. The channel is HooperCast again, because I did it, and it won't let me change it anymore. It said you changed the name too many times. So it is definitely HooperCast. I think it's just HooperCast now on YouTube. I really ought to check what my channel is named. The channel is named... If I click on this icon, it will tell me. It is HooperCast with a H and a C, capital H and C. HooperCast is the name of the channel. Email is hoopercast@gmail.com if you want to shoot us an email and tell us we suck and you want us to kill ourselves. That's the place to go. We'll be back here with maybe a mini-sode later in the week, but definitely another full episode probably next week, unless... Dustin and I have opportunities to make more money, and then we will be at that place and not here.
Correct.
Dustin, welcome back.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
And we'll see you all next time.
Yep.
Woo! Oh, I really should play the outro music again. Oh, dear Jesus. There we go. All right. Bye, everybody.